Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday night, Tuesday evening session. Yes. As usual, we'll first sit in meditation for the first few minutes. I'll try to lead you through this, and then we'll get an open the session for this evening's topic. So try to sit straight. Meditation in the seated position, we have to have the back upright. That's important, so that the chest opens and it is kind of puts us in a comfortable yet dignified posture, with the head slightly bent, but most importantly the back upright, neither overarching nor overstraining. Eyes closed or semi-closed, whatever is comfortable. Lips, tongue, teeth left as normal. Mouth neither closed snugly nor widely open. Maybe tongue slightly raised upward, barely touching the upper palate. And then hands in either the classical meditational posture with the palms facing upward, with the right hand resting on the left and the thumbs, tips of the thumb touching, just forming this lotus-like shape, placed at a level 4 fingers width or so below the navel. Or else it could be resting on the knees with the palms either facing down or facing up, facing out, in which case you could have the first finger and the thumbs touching. So whatever is comfortable, but the back upright. Now we start with taking 3 rounds of deep breath, breathing in through the nostrils and out through the mouth. Deep, deliberate breath. As we breathe out, we visualize any lingering, remaining tensions either on the body or somewhere in the corner of the mind. They are also released out with the out breath. That's what we visualize. Let's take 3 rounds of deep breath, beginning with in-breath to the nostrils and out through the mouth. Now slowly settle back into the natural rhythm of breathing. Breathing in and out through the nostrils in one's usual, natural, effortless, unintended way, without imposing any specific length, strength, rhythm, pressure, whatsoever. Just breathe naturally as we usually do, unawares. And as we do so through our nostrils, rest one's attention on the breath. Try to be alertly, attentively resting our attention, awareness on the breath as it happens naturally, coming in and flowing out through the nostrils. Be fully present here with the mind being fully focused on the breath as it enters into our nostrils and as it flows out through the nostrils. Try to stay with the breath attentively, alertly, as it happens naturally, one breath at a time, round after round. Let the mind be fully filled with this awareness of nothing but the breath as it happens naturally. Let go of any other distractive thoughts, be that of recalling things of the past, or speculating something in the future, or being engrossed with any other sensations happening right now, or of any judgmental thoughts right now. Let go of them. When they arise, just merely acknowledge them and don't hold on to them, don't chase after them. Merely acknowledge that and remember to come back to the breath and stay with it, one breath at a time, round after round, for as long as one can. And the mind, when it wanders off again, just patiently acknowledge that, acknowledging that to be the reality. Remember to bring the mind graciously back to the breath and try to stay with it again for as many rounds as possible. Let the meditational exercise be infused with an element of alertness and attentiveness, being alertly attending on the breath, and try to stay like that for as long as possible without break. And as well as infuse it with a sense of delight in doing that, as though you are looking forward to doing it. And try to carry out the actual focusing in as clear way as possible. To facilitate the focus on the breath, try to be aware of the sensations of touch, wherever it may be happening in the nostrils or just outside the nostrils, in the form of touch, sensation of tingling, vibration, temperature, of warmness or coolness, just in that area within the nostrils and outside the nostrils. As you breathe in and out, be aware of the breath as well as of the sensations of touch, wherever it may be happening. All you have to do is just be aware, nothing more, nothing less. You do not have to label it, you do not have to interpret it, nothing but be aware of whatever is happening. Let's once again take one round of deep breath, breathing in and out through the nostrils. Now return to the natural rhythm of breathing through the nostrils and try to carry out the meditation as well as possible without my intervention. Now slowly bring all of your focus at the entrance of the nostril and make it a point to meet the breath there every time it enters, every time it exits the nostrils. Feeling the sensations of touch, tingling, vibration, warmness, coolness, whatever it may be related with the breath. Just make a point to meet the breath there and be aware of those sensations. Without feeling rushed, be fully present here. Just as your body is squarely on the seat, let mind be squarely within the body, resting squarely on the breath as it is happening, moment by moment, and try to stay with the breath. Let's once again take 3 rounds of deep breath, breathing in and out through the nostrils. Once again, return back to the natural rhythm of breathing, trying to be fully aware of the breath as it happens moment by moment. Let's now shift our focus from the breath to calling to our mind someone very close to us. One single person that is so kind to us. Picturing him or her clearly in our mind, with them in their typical smiles, being filled with sense of gratitude, sense of closeness, friendliness, appreciation. Join me in spirit in sending these prayers to that person. May you have happiness. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you be never separated from a lasting state of joy that knows no miseries. May you always abide in a full balance, undisturbed by the extremes of attachment and hatred. Now slowly replace that person with someone that you may be familiar or unfamiliar, but not related, not feeling that closely connected, someone that you would put in the category of strangers. May it be a familiar stranger or an unfamiliar stranger. Someone that you just happen to know with no special feeling of connection or any natural sense of appreciation or of having been benefited by. Call such a person to your mind. Again, picture him or her clearly. Think of the basic aspiration that we share with that person, of wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. How we are justified in having that aspiration, how natural is that, yet at the same time how justified, reasonable is that. And try to think of how we may be connected, how we may be indebted to their kindness. Think of the security measures in place. Think of the restraints that people exercise every now and then that you are benefiting from. Think of so many things that we happen to rely on for our own survival, for our own comfort, etc., that we don't know the source of. So many people can be connected with it. Right at this very moment, things we are enjoying, things we are wearing, things we are benefited by. So many come from so many faces, so many things, so many people that we don't even have a face for to identify with. Think of that story where someone got saved by the way their parachutes was folded carefully by someone stranger to them, how that came handy in saving their life when they had the accident. Likewise, every now and then when we move out, we go, we have access to things, we rely on things, how they are prepared, they are made available, the safety measures that we enjoy, that we benefit from, the restraints that people exercise, from which we benefit. By the force of these reflections, let oneself be filled with a sense of appreciation, gratitude, relatedness, at the very basic level of our aspiration. Also a sense of affinity with our shared incompetence, etc. And above all, the connectedness. once again join me in spirit in sending these prayers from the depth of one's heart with a tinge of such an appreciation. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you never be separated from a lasting state of joy that knows no miseries. May you always abide in a state of full balance, undisrupted by the forces of extreme attachment and hatred. Now replace that person with someone that you have usually difficulty sending these thoughts. The mere thought of whom brings you a sense of unease, if not hatred, anger right away. Towards whom we sometimes even feel justified to engender such thoughts. Picture that person clearly in your mind's eye. Try to think of the basic aspiration that we share with that person as well. How there can be so many reasons behind his way of relating to you, conditions that might have started with you, or maybe by how you subtly react, etc., or how your actions might have been misinterpreted, etc. Something has to be the cause there, or could be something personal that they have in their family, for which they are trying to find a vent, an outlet for. At the very least, when they act in the way they do, fueled with hatred and anger, etc., they themselves are not in control of themselves. They aren't having any fun at all. They are suffering. They are as much a victim of their own afflictions. Even in such a state of being, if one can manage to retain one's composure, then even that very situation can be turned around for one's own benefit, of how we can mirror ourselves in them, how we see our own weaknesses of giving in to the negative forces within us, etc., etc., thus coming to know what the areas are that we need to work on if we are really serious of wanting happiness and not suffering, etc. So drawing our strength of appreciation and even gratitude, etc., at the very least that of connectedness, join me in spirit in sending these prayers from the depth of one's heart. Make sure here, challenge oneself not to hold back. Try to be fully giving, fully meaning. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you never be separated from the lasting state of joy that knows no miseries. May you always abide in equanimity, free from the extremes of hatred and attachment. Now call back the two previous persons and picture all three of them in front of your eyes, mind's eye. They are now joined by the rest of the humanity, feeling the entire space behind them. Symbolic of their relationship with us, or at least our way of perceiving them. One group has smiles on their face, wide open, another has no emotions, the other has hatred on their face. Connecting back to the basic aspirations that we share, as well as of our connectedness, no matter what our relations may be, of how all of them always retain the prospect of benefiting us immensely, that can go a long way in really building our genuine sense of happiness and whatnot. join me once again in sending these prayers to everyone. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the forces of hatred and attachment. May all sentient beings be never separated from a lasting state of joy that knows no miseries. While wishing so, feel that infinite rays of light emanate from your heart, filled with these immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Feel energies going from your heart, rays of light, infinite of them, touching each and every sentient being. Now bringing wide open smiles in their faces, with their hearts filled with as much love, compassion, sense of caring towards you and each other. Rejoice in such a state of understanding, of appreciation, of brotherhood, sisterhood. Now slowly come out of the meditation, opening your eyes, yet retaining that sense of appreciation and connectedness. The other sentient beings may or may not have benefited from this, but for sure we have benefited from this. Now we begin to feel good within us, and that must have given rise to so many good cells within us. Neurons, synapses, good connections. Okay, so this evening we're going to deal with what the announcement said, forces of steadfastness. But without any background to this, people would have different ideas of what this might be. Many of you may remember I did touch on these topics, though in quick successions last time. Not this previous last time, one of the last times, but I don't know whether you remember from that or not. I used the term force. The whole inspiration is drawn from Acharya Shantideva's text, to be specific, from his 7th chapter, the chapter on virtuous efforts. The chapter on perseverance, if you want to look up for details. It's a marvelous chapter, like that of the previous one on tolerance. It is indeed a source of a deep, what do you call, manual of psychological healing. But that chapter, the 7th chapter, deals with joyous effort. Now, when I recall joyous effort, now you may remember one occasion when we had this joyous effort as a topic for our discussion. And I had issue with the translation joyous effort, perseverance, whatever, and went further to explain this. From a Buddhist perspective, when we speak of joyous effort or zhendu, perseverance, for want of a better term, it means enthusiasm, but enthusiasm with a difference. Enthusiasm not just for anything, but enthusiasm for virtuous actions. We all have great degrees of enthusiasm, not necessarily for the virtue things. So many of the neutral things we have enthusiasm for, and in some cases negative things also. We have indulgences, enthusiasm for things. But that doesn't count. That doesn't count for this kind of a perseverance which holds the promise for building on our prospect of happiness and joy. Thus, this perseverance, which is counted among the 6 paramitas, the paramita of joyous effort, is this enthusiasm for want of a better term, enthusiasm for virtue. But when I say enthusiasm for virtue, I'm not so sure whether it conveys the right thing or not. It is because it seems to take the spirit out of this whole enterprise. When we say virtue, it's like, oh, it could be an interest for someone, but not for everyone. But here, what we are cultivating enthusiasm for is the causes of happiness. Enthusiasm for the causes of happiness. And for that, we need to recognize what are the causes of happiness. And for that, we need to recognize what is happiness. This is a very, very big question. We are all happiness seekers. We may want or we do not want. That's the way we are. That's the basic underlying, whatever you may call it, driving force, whatever. That is the basic underlying driving force of whatever movements, whatever actions, mental, physical, verbal, we engage in. The very basic underlying driving force. We are driven by aspiration for happiness and freedom from suffering. But not necessarily are we always fortunate and lucky to actually meet with happiness and the causes of happiness that we want, and not meet with suffering and the causes of suffering that we don't want. In between that driving force and the movements and the motion and the action that we engage in, there are links that need to connect from the driving force to the action that we go about doing. Very often we don't have so good connection. We're intercepted by confusion, we're intercepted by ignorance, we're intercepted by miscalculations. So they come in the way and completely change the course of our action, which end up bringing more suffering, more confusion, more constriction, more confinement. One example is how eager we are, or how easily, easily triggered we are, how easily we go into the mode of selfishness. That's a clear indication of how we end up choosing a wrong means. So the enthusiasm that we need to build is not just for neutral things, not just for, of course, not for negative things, but for the causes of happiness. We call them virtues. So virtues mean different in different cultures. But for whatever we are using the term virtue, we're using it for the causes of happiness. We're using it for the mental causes of happiness. Among them, we count working on love, working on compassion, working on wisdom, working on tolerance. All these are the virtues that we need to build enthusiasm for. And the lack of enthusiasm is what's getting us from coming ever closer to achieving something. So from a Buddhist perspective, enthusiasm in this light, or the joyous effort, actually it is, even when we say perseverance, it is not at all complete. When we begin to say joyous effort, it's still not so complete. Joyous effort for what? So joyous effort in the direction of virtues. That's what conveys the whole definition. So when I use the term force here, the author is using a metaphor, should I say, drawing from ancient way of life. In ancient times, there were no aeroplanes, there were no sophisticated ships, there were no sophisticated drones, there were no sophisticated warheads, nuclear heads, none of that. All they could come up with in terms of really being prepared in the face of others' invasion and whatnot are what they call four forces. They have to depending on how well prepared they are on the four forces, they can be considered strong, they can be considered prepared to face any eventuality. What are those four forces? One force is the army force, one is the cavalry. When you say cavalry, what is it? Okay, thank you. Cavalry. The third is elephant force, people riding on elephant, and then what would be the fourth one? I don't know, for sake of counting, whatnot. They count chariots separately. The force of chariots, the force of elephant warrior, the force of horse warrior, cavalry, and the force of footed armies. That's what they have to work and build to counter. So likewise, in the scripture, it uses that analogy and says that to build our enthusiasm for positivity, enthusiasm for working on, for recognizing, identifying the causes of happiness, and then once you have recognized them, once you have nailed them down, then the enthusiasm to work on them needs to be multifaceted, needs to be worked on so many different angles. So of those angles, one is, again for lack of a better word, the force of steadfastness. And that is steadfastness in the sense that one has to build on this force, one has to build on this mental preparedness of being steadfast in the face of obstacles, in the face of challenges. So that's what I'm going to dwell on. But before we do that, let's name the other three forces. One is Kevala Dumpa. One is the One is the intention. Setting an intention. It makes a big difference. Setting an intention. Say you set an intention that I will. It's like resolution, right? If you set an intention, say I will achieve this. It makes a big difference. Unless you are too sloppy on your resolution, saying, oh, you make and then you break, and you have built the habit of breaking it, then it would lack that force. You have to be skillful even in making resolutions also. Don't come up with too many resolutions that you are sure right from the very beginning that you will break it. You rather come with the more realistic ones, practical ones, slightly challenging ones, but practical ones. Stick to that. And then under the force of that resolution, you work, and you achieve it. Then it will also give you a sense of, yes, I can do it. Sense of delight, of course. Likewise, the first force is that of setting the intention, setting a resolution, that yes, I will work to find what happiness is. What are the causes of happiness is. Have you done this? We should have done this. By now we should have done this. Not just done this, but done this several times. And should have made strides in really understanding what happiness is. By now we should have a dissertation on happiness. This is so crucial. How come happiness could have been missed? So that intention. And with that kind of intention, we can see ourselves being moved in that direction. Every now and then we'll be looking out. There can be so many pockets of opportunities there, saying, here is it, but we may not be aware of that. Once we have that kind of we have rolled out that kind of intention, that kind of preparedness, then when we look, we become more sharper in our awareness. And then even a slight hints can be caught. Somebody may say something, some birds may chirp, something may happen, it will click. So that kind of a setting the intention, or rather setting a resolution that yes, I will try to figure out what happiness is, what are the causes of happiness is. That's the first force. The second is the steadfastness in terms of one's determination that no matter what comes, I will be steadfast in this. And that has to be complemented by the understanding that yes, nothing is more important than this. Nothing is more important than figuring out what happiness is, what are the causes of happiness is. And chances are that one will begin to understand what happiness is and what the causes of happiness is, which is not confined to doing one thing as opposed to another. It could be widely available in just about anything that you want to do, but be doing it differently with a difference. So that kind of a steadfastness, that's what I'm going to spend the next 2-3 minutes before we use up the time. And then the third force is the force of joy. That is every once in a while to dwell on points of this endeavor of making sense of this endeavor of looking after happiness and the causes of happiness in such a way that it enhances the joy in doing it. That needs to be. That's like the boost. Every once in a while, you need that kind of a boost. That yes, oh, this thing I'm doing, oh, this is joyful. The kind of making sense out of it, and then thereby building on the joy of it. So that's something that needs to be done intermittently. And then the fourth one is very important. It says the fourth force is the force of abandonment. Under the enthusiasm, you may become too ambitious, too enthusiastic, that you may end up embarking on completely unpractical things. That is bound to discourage you, that is bound to disappoint you, or at least something that may not be right for you at this time. You have to be looking out for that and recognize that. Even if that is a good mission, good work towards the same goal, but if it is too much, you have to recognize that, oh, this is not the time for that. I have to go bits by bits in a practical way. In a practical way. If say, oh, I'm here to look up for happiness, I'm going to leave everything behind and go into the Himalayas. It may not be the right thing to do. So that's not the right time. If you recognize, yes, that's not the right time, I'm not up to it, recognize that. And don't rush into resolving it and even making a declaration of it in the presence of everyone. Even announcing it in the TV also. And the next day saying nothing. Even convening a press conference. So that's what you are warned against doing. Rather recognize what is practical. Even if it is in the right mission, be practical in terms of what is timely, what not. Recognize that. If you have somehow already embarked on it and recognize that, oh, this is not the right time, do have the courage to say, okay, this is not the right time, I should shelve it for a while. But then if you think that, yes, this is practical, this is timely, whatnot, then you persist on it. And then be determined, drawing from other forces, then persist on it. Don't make the habit of making a resolution, breaking it, making a resolution, breaking it. Almost like it will eventually become synonymous. It will almost eventually become, making a resolution is synonymous to breaking resolution. Then there is no use. Then one is missing out, one is going to lose on a big force that could have been very helpful to oneself. Now one cannot rely on that force of resolution because it has become synonymous to breaking resolution. So should not go into that habit. So that's the fourth force. The force of recognizing when to abandon. Now coming back to the third one. The third force. So these are the forces one should be working on, kind of multifaceted forces from different angles that will give rise to a very strong, healthy force of joyous effort. See, today we are speaking on joyous effort. And joyous effort for what? For cultivating love, for cultivating joy, for cultivating tolerance. All those qualities that we speak of, that we recognize needs to be cultivated within us, that can open doors of happiness for us. We need to build on yet another force of enthusiasm towards them, perseverance towards them, joyous effort towards them. So that's what it's all about here. So in that regard, the author speaks of four forces to build up, of which the one that I'm going to dwell on is the force of steadfastness. Now it is contextualized, right? We have the context. We only have 2 minutes. Okay. It's so interesting. So, with regard to the force of steadfastness, he says that steadfastness, with regard to, the steadfastness, he even uses the term arrogance here, but he loses no time in explaining that this arrogance is very different from the negative kind of arrogance that we usually understand. So I'm not going to use the term arrogance here, but it's interesting how he uses the term arrogance here, saying we need to build up on 3 kinds of arrogances. But then he loses no time in clarifying that this should not be mistaken for the kind of negative arrogance that we know of. Arrogance which when we generate within us, puffs us up, makes us bloated, makes us inflated, under the force of which then we begin to tend to look down on others, begin to undermine others' qualities, fail to learn from others, get ourselves carried away by our own ego. He's quick to recognize that, point out that not that kind of arrogance. So anyhow, it's interesting. But But what he is pointing to is a sense, kind of a sense of self-esteem, sense of confidence, that kind of feeds into a sense of steadfastness in the face of any potential dangers, any potential obstacles. So, in this regard, in terms of building this steadfastness, one has to recognize the potentials within oneself, potentials to steer clear of the afflictions within us. No matter how often we may be engulfed in afflictions, anger, jealousy, greed, every once in a while, the moment we face here, we feel envious. The moment we face here, we feel angry. And then here, jealous, etc. So, one has to recognize that that doesn't have to be the way. One has to recognize that in between those forces, there are doors of opportunity. There are doors opening doors, no matter for however small time, that points us to the potential for freedom from the afflictions, potential for sense of freedom, potential for sense of sense of relief from the afflictions. And along with that, he says that the way to build on this steadfastness, to cut through all these technicalities, what is this steadfastness about? What is this perseverance about? The perseverance to overcome the afflictions within us. Why? Because the afflictions, like the anger, jealousy, greed, hatred, etc., they are like the most strong stumbling block on our way to happiness. We have to remember we are, after all, feeling beings, experiencing beings. We are very different from cups and mugs and anything. Even computers, even mobile phones, however smart they may be, we are very different from them on one thing. Because we are capable of feeling, sensing, experiencing. It's on that level that we can talk of happiness, suffering. Oh, my mobile is suffering. We cannot say that. Oh, what about my car? Even if it is left in scorching heat, the car is not suffering. Just because they aren't feeling things, experiencing things. We may go into so many extents in terms of how to explain it or whatnot, but we may differ. We may go so many different ways in explaining how it is, whatnot, but irrespective of that difference, we are nonetheless feeling sentient beings. It's on that level that we can speak of love, happiness, joy, suffering. So, if that is the case, if that's what comes down to what suffering is, where suffering happens, where happiness can be built, whatnot, then of course afflictions needs to be accounted for. They play a big role there. So without jumping into conclusion, like Buddhists have done, by saying afflictions are the causes of suffering, get rid of them, we have to do our own research, small research, and come to know that. Once we have hit on whatever it may be, then build on the enthusiasm to work for that, having nailed down what ultimately matters in the realm of happiness and suffering. So it says that afflictions, they are the stumbling block in our way to build happiness, in our way to clear suffering. happiness in the form of feeling happiness, suffering in the form of experiencing suffering. Nothing is suffering unless it is experienced. Nothing is happiness unless it is experienced or felt. We cannot for sure say there is happiness there, right? Actually, there is a problem when we go about our usual way saying, "Oh, so happy, so suffering," right? "Oh, I must go there because there is happiness there." There's no guarantee. It has to be felt here. And what are the conditions here? Unless we make those conditions right, there's no way. However close we come to that condition that we associated with happiness, we cannot guarantee ourselves to feel happiness, not at all. So this needs to be experienced, this needs to be explored in just about anything that we do. Just about anything that we do that is revered in the society. Having this car, having done this doctorate, whatever it may be, having risen the corporate ladder to the apex, no guarantee for happiness. But again, don't mistake me. I'm not saying if you rise up that ladder, there will be suffering. No. It will depend on how prepared you are, how skilled you are, how knowledgeable you are with your own working of the mind, at the level of which experience is happening, be that of happiness or suffering. So in that regard, afflictions play a big role. And from a Buddhist perspective, afflicted emotions, they are the stumbling block to our happiness. They need to be cleared, and if possible, they need to be cleared. And to that extent, our prospect for happiness, or at least equanimity, will be enhanced. If you can manage, then replace them with love instead of hatred, joy, rejoicement instead of jealousy, etc. Equanimity instead of extreme obsession. Then the prospect for happiness will even build more. So we need to so there definitely is the need for perseverance, joyous perseverance, openness to figure this out. It needs to be figured out right here and now. Cannot be delayed further. And once we do that, then anything that we touch on, it's like a magic wand. Whatever it touches, it turns into a cause for happiness. It can be turned into. So it says that afflicted emotions, I say it says, because it has to be arrived at. One has to arrive at one's own understanding. Only then it becomes one's own effort, fueled with one's own enthusiasm, understanding, etc. But what the scriptures say is that afflicted emotions, they are such that once you fall in their grip, you become completely dependent, you lose your freedom. You lose your control. When you are very angry, you lose your sense of conscience. When you are very hateful, when you are very obsessed, infatuated, you lose your control also. You lose your senses. So that's one of the indispensable, inseparable quality of the afflictions, that they have a condition of controlling you to the point of making you lose your senses. So what holds more prospect for happiness? By losing senses or gaining senses? So that's a clear indication that yes, enthusiasm needs to be worked, enthusiasm needs to be directed towards working against afflictions. So that's where the direction is. So one part of developing steadfastness is recognizing where one should direct one's attention. Arriving at a understanding, clear understanding, what needs to be tackled, Once you have arrived at that understanding, then that will also boost up your steadfastness of where to stay. Not wavering, not be fickle, not be, may I coin a new word? It may be already there, but not be fuzzling. Sorry. So anyway, so that's one way to boost up on one's steadfastness. By recognizing what afflictions do, and that way nailing down on what needs to be worked on. From a Buddhist perspective, I remember even saying that Buddhism as a whole is nothing but a declared war against afflictions. Because there lies the prospect of happiness or ever suffering. And it comes with strategies, different levels of strategies in dealing with it. Some superficial, slightly more sophisticated, some even claiming that can uproot it to the point of making it irreversible, and even clear the traces of it, so that even the subtle traces cannot be felt. So whatever may be, it says that the afflictions stand in the very way of our happiness, of our genuine happiness. So, in this regard, it says that one should not be lacking in the force of steadfastness. Once you have nailed it down, one should not be lacking in the force of steadfastness, steadfast in fighting against the afflictions. Because as soon as you loosen up, you feel weak on your steadfastness, other factors will take advantage of you. It gives you an example. When it comes to dealing with a dead snake, be that a dead python, be that a dead cobra, or whatever, when it is dead, even the crows will play like, I can deal with you. It's because now the snake is dead, can't do anything. As soon as the crow finds out the weakness of it, no matter how giant and spectacular it, or so how big it may look, as soon as it's figured out that it is dead, it will play like I'm eagle, like this. Likewise, it says, as soon as you loosen up, you slacken up on your steadfastness, afflictions will pop up their head, declaring, oh, slight chance of independence here, why not rack him up? So, with regard to this kind of a steadfastness, with regard to this kind of a conviction that yes, afflictions need to be watched out for, needs to be ever vigilant about, one cannot take a break. At least it has to be there in the back of your mind, ever ready. Otherwise, these afflictions will pop their, not just pop out their head, even come out full-blown and wreak havoc of your mental world. And partly because we have built a force of that within us through familiarization, through doing it again and again and again and again without restraint. We have been giving in to being angry to someone. Sometimes it so happens that we find someone, we almost feel like justified. Oh, he comes, all I have to do is be angry. That's how we build on that strength. Unbridled. Then eventually the force would have grown so big that even a slight thing in the face of, even a slight trigger can really make you angry. That even if that be from your children or from your near ones also, slight things can. You have become so used to it. So we have reason to be vigilant against. We have reason to kind of build that steadfastness against afflictions. Because one, they can pop up their head anytime. Another, they already have that strong hold within us. Now, another way to make up for the strength of steadfastness, after having recognized, say, that yes, afflictions need to be built, need to be worked against. They are the stumbling block. We have to recognize that they are the stumbling block. It's not the lack of something that necessarily can make you suffering. But afflictions, once you give in to them, necessarily there is no second alternative to not suffering. You will. But lacking something, you can make up for that. Lacking something doesn't necessarily have to, unless you give in to feeling that way. That needs to be understood. You may lack a car, you may lack someone, you may lack something, you may miss something. But in terms of whether you want to feel bad, depressed, disappointed, whatnot, it's in your hand. It's not completely linked with that. You can turn around, look at that thing. The same thing could be uplifting. Same thing could really could be completely turned around. So the key lies within us. The kingdom of heaven is within us. Deal with it first. I'm really inspired by that teaching. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of happiness, the key for happiness is within us. Understand that first and get hold of it first. Everything will be granted. That is so beautiful, so beautifully put. I may be interpreting it in a Buddhist way, I don't know, but that's how I understand it. That's how I understand it. So because we have so many afflictions within us, sometimes we feel justified saying, now I cannot keep on going like this. I cannot keep on being vigilant. It's too much. They're popping heads from here and here and here and here, everywhere. Anger here, jealousy here, greed here. I cannot. I completely disarm my vigilance. Then the scripture says, no, that's not going to get you any closer to happiness that you want. If at all, it will just drag you down into suffering evermore. There's no second choice in this, no second option in this. That's the reason why we began our session with Tadyatha Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhiswa. This journey on building our inner wealth, on figuring out the kingdom within us, there's no option, there's no second way. We need to persist on it, no matter what the obstacles are. Keep on perceiving, gate, proceed further, proceed far beyond. Then eventually you will find yourself landed on a state of full joy. Bodhi swaha, full awakening may come, but only by persisting, by insisting, not giving up. For there is no other way out but dealing with the afflictions within us. If you just let loose the afflictions within you, let them have free say, and then you provide yourself with all these materials, relationships, names, fame, power, whatnot. With every addition, you will feel ever more ruined, ever more suffering. That's for sure. If you have anger, jealousy within you, then with the achievement of power, name, fame, you'll be only fueling it more. If you have jealousy with wealth coming, then the more wealth comes, you become more jealous of others who have it, you become more worried, you become more greedy. That if you let loose of that, whatever comes, it's almost like an addition to your suffering. But once that is taken into control, not necessarily taken into control at one go, of course, that would be too much to ask for. That is the tall order. But definitely one has to persist on it. Gate, gate, paragate. Then with that done, then whatever comes, be that power, name, fame, game, whatever, it will be an addition. Now you will be able to enhance your happiness and also enhance your meaning of life, of being giving to others. So it says that in the case, in such a case, when you feel like, oh, I have so many of them popping head from anywhere, I just cannot manage. And he says, remember what the lions do in the face of hyenas. There's so many hyenas? Hyenas. Hyenas. Okay. Hyenas? What it is? What is it? Hyenas or? Okay. Yeah, hyenas are so nasty. They're not so good at looking also, but they are. They have so much tactics of attacking animals, poor animals. Some cattle, some even bisons. Thank you. Even bisons. Some moose, poor animals, when they get stranded, they're attacked. These hyenas are so tactful, mean. But they can do the same thing to lions. Even if there's one lion, hyenas around can be driven away, unless it is a weak lion though. So in such case, think of lion. How it's not necessarily the case that when you are faced with so many things, you definitely lose. No, look up at the lions. How do they deal with the hyenas? No matter how big a flock they may be. So that's what it teaches. One thing is that there is no option out. Another thing that is, yes, there is a way to deal with them. Only if you persist. Persist, not give up, not give in. Then there's a possibility that even how varied they may be, they can eventually be toned down, they can eventually be overcome. This is, again, this has to be built. Merely thinking, oh, now I'm lion, this will not help. Right? You will think, now I'm lion, and the side of your mind say, oh, you're not lion, you are man, you're a human being. Then it will just attack and it will just come down. How to build? It's just an example, but how to build up that kind of a sense is that no matter how much reasons you may have, be that on the ground that, oh, there are so many of them, I cannot deal with them, they're so strong, or whatever. It says that by giving into them, there's no way you are ever going to benefit. It's not that by giving into them, maybe there's a chance of benefiting, there's a chance of, growing on your prospect happiness. That is a foregone conclusion that the more you give in, you will suffer. So that needs to be the line within you. No matter how many of them, giving on to them is never an option. Stand up like a lion, never giving in to any one of them, no matter how many there may be around you. Backed by the understanding that by giving into their afflictions, You're never ever going to improve on your prospect of happiness. You will suffer. And not just that, you will lose your senses, you will lose your conscience, you will lose your sensibilities. And who knows, it is totally unpredictable. Once you give in to afflictions, what follows? That's another nasty quality of these hyena-like afflictions. Once you give in, there's no way you can predict what will come next. Once you give in to this, it will bite, it will bite, it will bite. They will undo you. That kind of understanding needs to be built, needs to be engaged in, so that the lion in you comes up, and then the hyenas just are scared away. The scriptures even say that the scripture even go to the length. Yeah, it would be interesting if you look up the 7th chapter of Shantideva's text called Bodhicharvatara, Shantideva's masterpiece. He came in 8th century something. His text is still serving humanity. That's what our thesis should be. Our dissertations should be like that. They have a lasting service in the truest meaning. In that scripture, he even goes to the extent of saying, even if I were to lose my life, even if I were someone were to cut my hands or cut off my head, giving in to the afflictions, it's never an option. In another text by Nagarjuna, he says, even if, say, right now, even if your head is under fire, that would look very strange, right? With your head, only head under fire. And even if your whole body is under fire, if the option is between dealing with the afflictions and getting the fire out, that should get the preference. That's just an example. I mean, that's to convey the what do you call that conveys what? Yeah, that conveys where the priority should go, how important it is. So the next time we go to work, we go to school, we go to whatever, we have to develop this habit of ever coming back, looking into our mental world. How am I mentally poised here? Am I starting out with anger, jealousy, greed, jumping onto a conclusion? Am I already starting with a black agenda, dark picture of that person? Go there first and deal with that first. It will work wonder in terms of how you present yourself, how others accept you, how you understand things. And then in the course of, in the due course, in the mean course, you will be feeling at the feeling, what do you call it? At the feeling motor, at the feeling center of us. That's just called the feeling center, which is the main center. At the feeling center of us, everything will be in order. So even if whatever the conversation is, whatever the mission is, whatever you are up against, the journey, the course of going through that would have been felt, if not joyfully, at least with the least suffering, or with the sense of equanimity. Yeah, another example, another metaphor it gives is, just as we consider our eyes so important, right? We consider our eyes so important that we would go to any extent to protect it. Likewise, a similar sense of value, similar sense of preciousness should go to our mental health. Are we doing that right now? Are we paying more attention to our physical health than to our mental health? Whereas we feel whatever we do at the mental level. I'm going to start a new insurance company, assuring mental health. Are you going to buy? Okay, with this insurance up in the air to go for, we'll stop here. Yes, please. We seek your blessings that all karmic deaths, obstacles and sufferings of mothers beings may without exception ripen upon us right now, and that we may give our happiness and virtues to others, and thereby invest all beings in bliss. And thus, O venerable, compassionate Gurus, that we seek the blessings, that all karmic deaths, obstacles and sufferings of mother beings may without exception ripen upon us right now, and that we may give our happiness and virtues to others, and thereby invest all beings in bliss. Lama toje chema jundo ve ti ti do nge ma li ta 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 la mi ba ta da gi de ge xian la tang wai do gu de tang den bara xin ji lo do gu de tang den bara xin ji lo Rinpoche ma je panam je juru chi je ba nyam ba me bar yang gong ne gong du pe war sho. Sublime bodhicitta, not yet born, be born, and that which has been born, not decline, but increase forever. Oh yeah, Tojiche, thank you.